All right. Welcome, Internet. Let me get my microphone a little less tangled up in all the cables here. Today, we're going to ask the question, where my money though? And we have to consider a couple of things. First, we're not going to discuss what money is, how money works, and ever since the gold standard uh, was exonerated, how we actually back our money. That's a different topic. What I'm going to talk about is you put your money in the bank or potentially you pay for insurance. And why are we talking about insurance? Well, there's a lot of insurance stuff happening today. A lot. So let's understand the similarities between a bank and an insurance company. First and foremost, you have money. Congratulations, you're probably doing better than most. But you have money for that money to go somewhere. You can, option one, stick it under your bed. Not very safe. So, what we normally do in our society is put that money in a safer location, whether it is a building, a safe, or someone else to manage it for us with the promise that it'll be back when we go ask for it back again. You get the idea. So, what happens when your money, I'm going to be looking down because I'm going to be actually drawing, but what happens when your money goes to a bank? Let's say you got 200 bucks and you want to store it somewhere safe. In fact, let's make the numbers simpler. Get 100 bucks. Okay? We ain't rich. We just got enough to get by. That seems to be the standard in today's society. A couple of bucks here and there after rent, internet, phone, car insurance, regular insurance or health insurance, house insurance, everything, right? Uh, it used to be subscriptions to Netflix. Let's not forget those. If telephones for how many people you have. We just have so much more leaving as a bill than, let's say, in the 1950s. 1950s, what do we have? House. What? Come on. I just fixed this. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why you dots? Why you do dots? Okay, we back to normal? Think we're back to normal. My computer starts to bug out for some reason. All right. 1950s, we had what? A house. Oh, it's bugging out again. That's nice. We have a noose. That's great. What? Why is it doing it right now? Of all the fucking times, why are we in this right now? Maybe this is taking a processing? Maybe it's just I'm really too high up? All right. Let's say it down here. The 1950s, we had a house, a car, not even phones. We had insurance for both, right? So not only are you paying for, let's say, a mortgage or the house itself, you've got the house and the car, you've got the insurance on top. You had a home phone, you had electricity and water. And that's basically your bills for the 1950s. But obviously, go to today's modern day, you've got those. So house, car, phone, which is going to be a cell phone. You've got potentially insurance for all of these. You've got your entertainment, cable, Netflix. Who watches cable? So let's call that Netflix cable because technically most people are now away from your archaic cable networks. And personally, I have servers, I have um, tools like Microsoft, Adobe, There's a lot of things that we can essentially go into a subscription basis, but we can kind of just deduct that today's bills are far, far, far more diverse. So you have $100. Let's go back to that. It goes to the bank. Well, what the bank likes to do is because it would be so simple if they just stuck it under their bed and they just posted a guard at the front and just protected your money. But then the guard has to get paid, and the bank wouldn't make any money that way. So they would have to do something to make money to pay the guard and to pay the people involved, the accountants, the cashiers, or the people at the front counter. So many bits and pieces to that system. So banks have to essentially make some money. However, that's debatable on how much of the actual value and money that will be. So technically, a bank has to minimally keep 10%. Why every time up here you have problem? So a bank has to keep 10%, and then the other 90, it is put somewhere. Stocks, bonds, and potentially in the future, crypto. Anything that can bear money back. Now, this case scenario, 10% of your 100 means that you're actually, if that's all the money you had, and let's say that's all the money everyone had, and everyone put $100, each person maximum would be able to take out $10 from their 100. Now, you're looking at me, the little trash panda on the screen, and saying, hold on though, where my 90 though? Where'd the money I put there though? Where the rest of my money though? Well, that's kind of the big problem. In emergency situations and what we would call a bank run, they would not be able to pay out everyone back. You see, as time, money does gain inflation. So, what values you have in individual dollar amounts will decrease over time. And as of recent times in our modern society, with stimulus constantly being printed out for all kinds of excuses, we've basically doubled, if not tripled, our money supply. Now, if you don't know how that works, let's say you have one awesome Pokemon card, super rare, holographic. It's amazing. It's probably worth $10,000. And you're the only one that has it. Maybe you can even sell it for 100,000. But they decide to print more of these same Pokemon cards. And not just print, but mass produce them. So what we would normally have as a single Pokemon card that's worth 10,000, now you have two Pokemon cards, roughly 5,000 each. This is called inflation. The more supply, the less the value. And this is what the general sense of investing and putting your money in anything tries to solve, tries to essentially counter. So when you're dealing with dollar paper, well, there's a lot of dollar papers, right? There's stacks and stacks and stacks. And if we've got a federal entity just printing more, continuously, well, those stacks keep growing just like those Pokemon printing keeps going. So as time goes forward, more paper is printed and more inflation is included. Now, this can happen in sudden waves, of course, and emergencies. COVID lockdowns, 2008 financial crisis, money that's printed and provided to the institutions to continue functioning, or mainly the banks, right? So the GCF situation is a stimulus towards banks because technically they're the ones holding your money, so the responsibility is to make sure that they can pay you back, or at least that's the idea. However, if you read a lot of news, if you keep track of actual events, if you track data, that wasn't for you. That wasn't you stimulus. That was stimulus to stocks, what they call buybacks. So, in order to prevent the stocks from going down, which by the way, they're already invested in. So, if stock go down, they lose money and they're royally screwed. So, these stock buybacks was in essence a way to maintain their current stock investments so that, well, the whole system doesn't fall apart. So not only do you have these sort of bank runs as scenario one, now we have a second scenario, stocks. Almost everyone that can access or has a slight idea of what an equity is, what a stock is, buying Apple, buying Microsoft, Tesla, whatever, the actual company bits and pieces. Maybe you have no idea what you're buying. All you know is stock go up, you buy, you make more money. And that's where the problem lies. Not in your understanding of it, it's in the strategy in which we're trying to maintain our economic system. So, in a way, this was necessary. The stock buybacks was necessary. Some of that stimulus did go to the lending, and that's where really most useful stimulation is accepted. And that's kind of where the 90% should really focus itself on. Not so much on stock buybacks and bonds and crypto, but investments. Actual productive investments. This is where we used to do our business down here before we had stocks and bonds and all this other stuff. And what is a productive investment? Someone that wants to open up a pizza restaurant, not just a pizza, a restaurant for pizzas, and they need the money to get started. So you take some of that 90%, you give them a lend, a, you give them some money to lend. They build their restaurant, they start paying you back, and plus interest on top. So if you lent $100,000 for the pizza, the bank is giving you 100, and you're probably giving the bank about 110. So not only is the money gaining a little extra, but productively, now there's a new restaurant. People can go eat food. And this is productive. It supports society, it supports infrastructure, it supports industrialization and entertainment and everything that we have done up to the 2000s. Maybe even before, maybe 1990s, the last of the good eras. So what are we doing with the 90% now? Well, it's not investments in productivity. All of it is essentially going to defensive concepts. We're told they're defensive because inflation is an enemy in a way. And these are the factors that can save us from inflation. Stocks, bonds, and crypto. So, with all of that, let's look at insurance companies. Are they different? Not so much. Their purpose is different, but the way they handle money is the same. You pay $100 for your insurance, they can't keep that money because over time it gets less in value. So they will essentially piggyback on the strategy that banks do. They will invest in the same ideas. Looking at it from this perspective, right? Better safe than be sorry. Better to put your money somewhere. Maybe they'll keep again like a 10% or some value that they can pay off in emergency if something happens and you require that insurance, whether it's health insurance, whether it's house insurance. And let's not talk about the California fires. That's way more than 10%, babes. That's like mind-boggling. Uh, I can't even put words to possibly how much that's going to be. But okay, we're in stocks, we're in bonds, we're in crypto. Everything's cool, right? No, because now it's a hunt. It's not even a hunt, it's a battle to keep stocks going up. Considering that some factors I've looked and uh, kept track of the stock market for so long, we're essentially like this. The dot com, GCF, and then the recovery, and then AI somewhere up here. And we're kind of holding up tight on that hill up there. Now, this is, of course, not perfect, but this is essentially where we are. This was a key checkpoint that we should observe very, very, very strongly from about 2009 to 2018, 17, somewhere around there. We had very low interest in borrowing money. Now, this was technically a stimulation as well in attempting to do what we were talking about, have productive investments, easier, lower amounts of money for interest on money being borrowed means that mom and pop can make more restaurants, can make more productive systems and stores and services. That's the idea. But we also discussed the buybacks. This is the buyback era. Not much new happened here. Only those that already existed. Your FANGs, your Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Googles, your Magnificent Seven, your Magnificent Six or Five or 10, or whatever is your mainstream headline in the business industry. That's where all the money went because all stocks in those cases grew upwards. And if you're invested in the stock market as both a insurance company and a bank, well, you don't want to see it go down because how much of your money is being held up? 90% or somewhere around there. Banks for sure have a minimum of 10% that they can actually back up the money they're keeping for you on your behalf. The rest they have to do something with, otherwise, there's a losing money possibility. So we've got our buyback age. Not productive, not to anything new, only to the existing systems and companies that are in the public stock exchange. Insurance companies on top. Again, everything is in the stock market, from tech to insurance to banks to telephones to food to cars to apartment complexes, everything, airplanes, everything. But not every entity in those spaces, only the one registered and accepted in that market. So, in essence, your top players in each of those categories. So, insurance companies potentially make this much money to this much surplus. The CEO says, all right, we maintained the $100 that you paid us 10, 15 years ago, plus the continuous payments, but we maintained your money without losing its value. And now there's like an extra percent surplus. What do they do with that extra percent? Do they put that in their own insurance as insurance to their insurance? No, that would be the smart thing to do. Because what if the markets fell? Then they'd be losing money. So they didn't put it as a just in case something bad happens, or a just in case we dip, or we correct, or anything possibly may happen in our system. They didn't put it under the bed just in case something bad happens, is what I'm saying. Just like you're putting a money away in insurance in case something bad happens, or for your house, for your health, for your car. They didn't put anything as a safeguard to their safeguard. They gave the CEOs that bonus. This is why there's an issue. This is why we have issues with corporations that play the market to make extra money. And we cannot talk about false journalism, um, either shilling something or trying to take down something. And as soon as some article somewhere uh, gets any sort of momentum, we can notice that same action happening. If it's a good action, then the stock go up. If it's a bad action, stock go down. So there are constant noises affecting the market. Not fundamentally, just emotionally. And that's an exploitation of the people or the entities playing in the market. They're emotional. So, in some way or another, they're not going to fundamentally gauge where they are and how to take care of the current huge growth. So now we're at a point where either market goes up, inflation continues, because again, stimulus here, and then stimulus around the COVID. I think it was much sharper in the COVID, something like this. And potentially stimulus somewhere up here. The general inflation rate of $1 in 2000 is now worth about, I saw 189, but I'm just gonna give it an even $2. Give it around $2 in 2025. So in about 25 years, the value of the dollar cut in half. That's why there's no more dollar menus. That's why Dollar Tree is not doing so good. That's why people are struggling to make ends meet. That's why it's getting more expensive to live. It's not going to be living wage. At some point, it's going to actually turn into surviving wage. Can you make enough money to feed yourself and house yourself? Just as minimum as it takes to survive. That's the point of breaking for a lot of people. So, why are we here? I'm not saying it's wrong to split the amount of money you keep and then invest a certain amount to maintain a stable goal. But keeping only 10% and investing 90%, that's a huge issue. The worth of that 90 is enormous. And any trip can cut that in half, if not further down. Now, as an investor, a trader, swing trader, day trader, depends on the situation. It's pretty easy to see $100 turn to 50 with the wrong move. But I don't have the immaculate tools that these institutions have. But sometimes you tend to wonder, as time goes on and education starts dwindling, as business calculus turns to business linear algebra, as the dumbing down of generations of educated individuals turns to just making ends meet and the professor not getting a bad look in the university, so probably better wave the class through. Give those below 50 a 60, 65, just enough to pass to the next class. You start to wonder, these were my working environments in the past. You start to wonder whether competency is really turning to be in any way capable of common sense. So not only banks have an issue with bank runs where you want to take all of your money out or a big chunk of it, not only you, but simultaneously a lot of people. Now we have another scenario, and that's the equity run. This will give us two potential back-breaking scenarios that kind of counter each other, if you really think about it. Remember that Pokemon card? We haven't talked too much about the inflation, but let's say 10 years down. Inflation, 10 years down. Each card will probably be worth about the local value of the time, about 5,500, about a 10% increase. And that's divided by 10. If that's what you have as a compounding interest, you're probably looking at a under 1% inflation. And we're not there. We're at about a 2 point something and climbing back up. So if we're looking at this, then we better have that card because now we can sell the card for cash and then use it to feed ourselves. However, not only has that inflated, bread, eggs, milk, everything has inflated. And depending on the general structure of our industry, it might be a general inflation based on the overall yearly percentage, or it could be productive or production based slowdowns that may happen. Other factors here that we haven't talked about, of course, is how that money is essentially made. We saw a little bit about the Fed printing, but a big one is as productivity goes up, you expect the pay behind that productivity to go up. The individuals making the product their salaries to go up. Well, technically, if productivity looks like this, and we're looking at like 1980, salaries have probably done this, almost flatlined. So most people are not making more than, well, what they're worth. So these are increasing, but pay is staying stagnant. And I'm talking about the price is increasing because of inflation, but the pay hasn't quite caught up. So everything becomes more difficult to basically keep up with if there's no adjustment to the actual salaries of the individuals that are inside of this economy. But when you have certain individuals making money out of the stock market, and then buying back into the stock market and continuously funneling the upward process, those that do not own equities get left behind. Those that keep cash end up losing money. And this is why there is a huge momentum towards going into anything other than cash, gold, bonds, equities, as we discussed, stocks, even crypto. This is a big case for crypto to exist in today's world. The mistrust of our officials to handle inflation with what we've seen so far, the saving, especially in insurance companies that are basically banks, at least in strategy, whom are supposed to provide health, find ways to filter and deny to save money. And then what that does that do? Well, that probably goes back to somebody up above. And those that are left with the life lottery luck, they can actually start to feel better because they were given the chance to get treated. Now, I want to talk about just a quick capitalistic concept. Let's just call it capitalism. I know there's a whole trend nowadays of capitalism bad, but we don't understand we have two forms of this. We have free market, and then we have essentially, um, what's the word they use all the time? Regulated. Now you'd imagine regulating something would bear good results, rules and regulations. But the problem with a regulated system is money is given to lobby, is given to Congress, is given to law that creates more money. This is the regulation that we essentially see. This is a case scenario where one of the affected things that we have in our system is called Citizens United. It sounds nice. That sounds pretty darn optimistic, too. However, inside of this, we have packs and basically methods, corp influences government with money. And the aspect is anyone with money can do this. Anyone can influence the government with money. It's a free market, right? Well, if you don't have money, what do you do? How do you influence anything? So it really is a case for a imbalance of the natural free market system. Free market capitalism is akin to Darwinism. Company on its own. There's no revolving circle. If make money, well, survive. If no make money, die. Those are the only two case scenarios that a company can potentially take. It cannot go and lobby to get more stimulus from the government. It cannot get a lending amount of money from the taxpayers to continue servicing their clients at the bank because they decided to overinvest during low interest times and get screwed over somewhere around here. This is the COVID era, and this wasn't drastically due to COVID, but this is where interest rates started to get in a different direction. And that's a whole different story we're not going to get into. But imagine lending money with almost nothing to give back, just free money. You can ask Japan. They used to have negative interest rates where they paid you to hold their money because it's basically that worthless. Yay. But all of a sudden, you go from zero interest to eight. And then, of course, that was temporary. Interest has cooled down since then to about 2 point something, 2.4, give or take. But it's still much larger than zero. So free money essentially is not free. And in the case of free money being given for no interest return, your company doesn't even have to make money in order to survive. You just keep borrowing over and over and over and over and over. So regulated capitalism creates zombie companies. Companies that serve no actual purpose other than existing. They make no revenue, but they can still make ends meet by getting money borrowed to them or lent to them for no return. Free money. What all of this really comes down to is it punishes anyone wanting to save money. And that's the hard part about this. We've been taught for so long to save money, invest it, and we can find a way through. But anyone attempting to save money now loses to inflation, loses to um, basically any of these processes as far as, well, we can't borrow more money anymore. Not for free, at least. And in order to fight inflation to get worse and further penalize saving, we have to essentially spend that money to help these corporations keep making higher values so our stocks go up. or stimulus. But stimulus is another subject. And I just kind of wanted to say there's a big relationship. Can we? Yes. Between how your money is being used. And it's right here. Banks and insurance companies are no different. They function the same way, other than one gives you money for anything because it's technically your money, and the other one gives you money for health insurance or car insurance or something that may happen in an emergency. With responsibility, no one would ever need this feature. This is a bug. Insurance is a bug. If we were capable of saving for our own insurance, we only need a place to save it. We have one. It's called a bank. If we act responsibly enough to save money, to not overindulge on unnecessary crap, we wouldn't ourselves be in this situation. We would never have these insurance companies where they are. Insurance companies come from the rise of irresponsibility because we're not able to save our own money. So now we have to give it to somebody else to save it for us. And that's where I want to stop. That's where I want to conclude. As people are starting to wake up, not be woke, because that's a totally different thing. That's a government led narrative. To wake up from our personal irresponsibility in the system and to kind of consider that labor comes in many forms. Business graduates, that's where they are. Yeah, the guys in fraternities, the guys that drank beer on a keg upside down, that's where they are. In this little insurance company right here. Because we ourselves as adults cannot save money to save ourselves. And we have to depend on them to spend our money and then essentially create a whole chaotic process of just maintaining stability. Just because we cannot just put money in the savings account, keep it there, and make sure we have something for emergencies. Now, insurance has gotten worse over the years because they influence health, health care specifically, the costs of healthcare. And that's a different story. I'm not going to go into that because it's going to get a little too long. So there's a lot of pieces to it. I just really wanted to state this. We need to grow up. We need to grow some balls. We need to take away all the unnecessary factors of our lives. Stop with the subscriptions. Get what you need. If it doesn't bring back money or food, you shouldn't have it. You shouldn't use it. You shouldn't buy it. You shouldn't subscribe to it. At this point, we are entering a survival based game. And this is one of my more serious videos because, well, at some point we have to get serious. But I can do it with a little fluffy critter here just to make things a little bit lighter. So this is your neighborhood friendly garbage panda. You'll catch me in your next garbage dump. As long as you put some pizza in there, I'll be over in just a second. Hope you guys are having fun, enjoying your daily lives, live day by day, plan for the future, and